The third speaker in this session today will be Alan McKiel. Alan is Dean of Library Services for Western Oregon University, having begun his career as a programmer and systems analyst. The merger of his technical skills with librarianship occurred at OCLC and NOTIS. He has more than 20 years of academic library experience, first as the Director of Libraries for Region 2 of Indiana's Ivy Tech Community College, then as the Director of Libraries for Northeastern State University in Oklahoma. He currently serves on the Muse UPCC Library Advisory Board and on eBrary's Technical Advisory Board.
Working? Says it's on. Can you hear me? Hello? Hello? Getting it? Oh, I'm live. All right. All right, I'm going to talk about basically some of the same things that each of them talked about, but it's in a very different context. We're a little library. We're 6,000 students at Western Oregon University. It's two big hit programs are education and business. We're a typical small university, a regional university. So all of the numbers that make sense to them don't make sense to us. We don't do big in the first place. We don't have the money to do big. All right, so I wasn't lying. Did you hear me well enough to understand what I said? Basically, I'm going to talk about this from a perspective of a smaller library. And we have a very different set of exigencies for purchasing resources, and I'll try and sort of make sense. But it actually may shed some light on where we might be going. Having said that, before I actually go down this road of talking about the particulars, and I present at the Charleston Conference every year, and four of us get up there and we do this library operations. This screen is the one we use. We talk about library operations every year. We talk about them in the context of what has happened for the technology over the last year, and where are we going from here, or what are the implications maybe for libraries, but also what did the previous year's discussion of some of the changes that have happened in the technology of information, what's happened to the library operations. So that's sort of where we're not exclusively talking about collection development, but most of it's up there. What I normally do is, before we start, I'm the one that does the little intro about some of the changes. And I thought I'd do the same thing here, only this is a very different arena with very different folks. And I decided what I was going to do is sort of frame this in a large picture. Just again, it's to get a sense of where we're headed at some sort of target view, so that we can make sense of some of the things we're trying to do. And having said that, I also want to reiterate a concern that we have, although for publishers. I mean, we're on the other side of we have very different exigencies for just how we look at how this thing ought to move and where it ought to go. But we have differences here on our libraries, on our research one, and that changes the game significantly. So, but at that point, I'm going to address our needs, but I'm also going to look at this larger frame so that we can sort of pull the thing together and see where we at least what our expectations are for the innovations that are happening in technology. So they're not here. This is just so I want to set up the frame. Let's give it a try and see what happens. Okay, so basically this is a very brief history of the world and innovation. And we're going to look at, where did this all start? It started with, symbolic language differentiating humans from apes. So it moved to writing about 5,000 years ago. Let's move on. When we go through writing, we look at printing that facilitates globalization, and then the internet is a question mark. Where does it go? So what we're going to do here is just do a ballpark picture of where this is going, and then we'll focus it down on libraries, particularly collection development. All right. and this is a stretch here. Sorry about this slide. It's very confusing. It's messy, but I love Vygotsky. And the reason I love Vygotsky is my wife's an educator, I'm an educator, and so we like educational theory. And this has some implications for the internet. Now, let me first read what he had to say about speech and practical operations. What he says about language, but at that point, what he's saying about the word and innovation, because these are the two concepts that we're going to sort of see move, and the things that we're tacking our visions to. The forming of the complex human unity of speech and practical operations is the product of a deeply rooted process of development in which the subject's individual history is closely linked to his social history. Now, this is a really fun thing, because this was a fight between Piaget and Vygotsky over, was this about language, or about, did language come out of tool development? Was it a practical operations concern? Or Vygotsky said, no, it comes out of primarily, well, it's not that, the focus, it may start with the operational end, but it ends up involved with communication. Now, let me bring this to the characteristic he uses to really differentiate. He goes to a mother and a child, because he studied primates and he studied basically human and chimps. But if you go to the mother-child relationship, so what differentiates the human from the chimp is that the human infant can see itself in the mother, and the mother can see herself in the infant. There are two selves going on here. Because you have a shared reality as well as a separate reality, you have two perspectives from which you can triangulate. You can have ideation. And it's fundamentally based in that, because really what the child is doing, what the child can do that the chimp can't do, is expect the mother to solve the problem. So it is about solving the problem. It's an operational concern. It's practical operations. But the way the human does it is by communicating. And they communicate because there's somebody else there. There are studies of, there's a lot of stuff that goes on with trying to see what happens with primates when you teach them sign language and things. And as it turns out, you can actually teach apes a considerable amount of sign language, and they can use it with human beings. They cannot use it with each other. There's nobody else there. They're just responding, or they sign to each other, and nobody's listening, because there isn't another. There isn't an other there. There isn't a union. So at any rate, it's 3 million, 5 million years of evolution from chimps to humans, or modern humans. But at any rate, that's the center part, because now you've got where innovation is going to come from for human beings. It's not genetic change. It is ideation, and it's learning. It's learning. It's community learning. All right. So for the last 200,000 years, moderns appeared with language that facilitates social evolution through collective learning and innovation. Two are linked. All right, somewhere around 5,000 years ago, we get agrarian civilizations, and we got this because we could do writing. And writing means you can extend the communication considerably beyond the, it gets much more detailed, much more precise, and you can preserve it. You preserve the conversation, you preserve the communication. And this basically brings us, instead of the furthest along we got when we were doing the development prior to writing was about 1,000, 3,000 people in one local area that you could use verbal communication and maintain some sort of system that would make it work. As soon as you get writing, you've got over 1 million people. So it changes significantly the complexity that can unfold and that you can maintain. But it's now the written word. And then we have the printing press. Well, this takes the the price of copies from what it costs to do a month or 2 weeks or 6 months or a year or whatever the particular work would. I said, he's one of the higher up folks in his culture in terms of pay. So these are expensive things to do. But when you have a printing press, it brings it down to $29.95. The cheaper information flow increases problem solving, learning, and innovation. So it ratchets this whole thing up because your communication now, you can distribute, you've got more copies going on, and more people can get into the communication game, which results in Protestant Reformation, scientific and industrial revolutions, a plethora of social and political revolutions, and brought us to our current level of globalization. Enter the internet. So now the big question is, what are the economics of and the expectations for the production and distribution of information in the context of the internet? What is happening to information? Well, right at the center, if we use the same terms, the cost of copies is approaching zero. And this is because you've got to get the initial setup, and you have to have the computers to do this, and you have to have the input, and you have to have the formatting and all this stuff. But once it's there, it doesn't cost you any more to distribute it to 7 billion people than one it does to 2. Basically, it's not quite true, but that's why, because the technologies do have a margin of concern. But we are at that point in the arena where copies are approaching zero. The cost of production, editing, peer review, and discovery of information continues to drop as information technologies evolve. So that's also going on. But this is an interesting loop on itself phenomenon, because what's happening is that the information is speeding up, figuring out how to do more information faster. So the whole thing is beginning to just kind of rocket out of the where it has been. So the economics of scale and interactivity will potentially pay for a lot more of everything. Again, think 7 billion people. Now this is the very large frame. So this is not what we are, because we're still stuck at this. We have to deal with print. Publishers more than librarians. So we tend to be pushing, we want to get out of print as quickly as we can. But if you drive publishers out of print, you push them out of business. That's where your revenues are. So this is going to take some time to stretch across. But librarians, I'm giving you this from the standpoint of librarians have now this set of expectations, because they want to see a different world. We're now, it's a potential information nirvana on the horizon here for librarians, and this is what they're seeing is potential. The information hierarchy is leveled. So I get what research ones get. That's just big for me. I can't do that now, but you extend this thing. It's just all of a sudden, copies aren't the problem, in terms of cost. The base collection for every library starts with 129 million ebooks. That's if they ever get a deal, Google. And if we also figure out what we're doing with orphan works, I believe both of those things will happen, just because there's 129 million texts out there that we want access to, and there's a stronger and stronger lobby to get that done somehow. They're a little ahead of us in Europe on civil legislation on this. So I want every student and faculty to have access to everything, and we'll pay for what we use. That's not this model. But again, there's a huge difficulty in getting from here to there, because we're stuck in the mix. So what I'm going to show you now is the mix in the context of my little library, because it turns out to be a very different mix than a research one's mix. So the numbers change, the economics change, the usage changes. So for me, a view of optimization is optimize the use of the various distribution models, big deals, individual titles, E&P subscriptions, PDA, and pay-per-view. to maximize content volume and minimize cost per use. Because if you extend this thing out, the costs drop. And I'm going to show you a model. For me, at this point, they already drop. As the content pool expands, the probability of the search term finding a relevant resource increases. Discoverability increases usage. Increased use decreases cost per use. That just kind of works in my mind. So here's the model. And this was, we're looking at 2008, 2009. And then we jumped to 2010, 2011, because what we did is in 2010, we began doing pay-per-view. And we did that by canceling titles that didn't get enough usage. The cost for the subscription was more than the cost for the $30 per hit on articles. So I canceled a whole bunch of them. Now, I had to do that in order to have enough of a pool of money because it's open-ended pay-per-view. So what we do is we just go get a variety of vendors. We open up those collections to our searches, and it's transparent. It was initially transparent for the students and faculty. If we linked to it in pay-per-view, we didn't tell them initially that we were linking to pay-per-view. It just showed up like it does in EBSCO or and that collaborates right off the bat, particularly Science Direct. Boy, it just kind of went off the charts. So we did put a screen that intervened that said, when this was before they actually got looked at the article, we put a screen up that said, "This is a pay-per-view. It's going to cost about $30. Don't let that stop you from using it, but please read the abstract first." And that slowed the thing way down. I mean, and so it was manageable. So because people go ahead, they self-police. But here's the model for us. The decreased overall cost for journals was 14%. This is the whole cost. This is everything I get for journals. It went from 317,000 to 273,000. Again, we're a small place. But the title count, by opening it up to open access, or to pay-per-view, was we better than doubled it. We went from 27,000 to 56,000 titles. Now again, this is the pool. And from my perspective, I want to increase the range of things that they have access to so that their search engines find what they want, which I have a very bad time, bad track record of trying to predict. So it's still a sort of closed environment because we're going through, we open up certain parts of the, we still have governors on this. Most of it has to do with just watching it as it goes to make sure it's going to fit within the budget, and we can kind of turn things off if they don't. So far, we've been able to pretty much, the initial guesswork was pretty good. So we're still on target. We're still moving along fine. Article usage, as you would expect, actually, it goes up because there's a larger volume pool. They find stuff. They find more stuff. Now, we had an interesting discussion earlier over what doesn't necessarily be better, more doesn't necessarily be better. But we also had another discussion that was, what's happening is there's also a shift in usage when you've got volumes like this. People are not trying to read the article. They're trying to do the work they need to do, and they're very focused in their search terms trying to find the information they need. So I would argue that actually could be a fairly valuable thing to do. It doesn't replace reading the whole article, but when you're in the context of research, it really does. It's very nice to be able to do this very quickly and have a wider range of places to go see if you can find the particular information you need. It becomes more of a reference work than it does a place to go look at articles. So we're moving off, we don't want to move away from the article. We want to move away, from the journal to the article. We want to move from the article to the piece of information you need and pay for that. So it's filtered down at another level. And the other thing you would expect is if you increase the usage, that the overall cost per use is going to drop, and it does. So instead of $1.98, if you take the whole pool of money and look at the number of times things were accessed, we've dropped down to $1.17 per access. So this, I'm just a couple of comments, and we may not actually be able to, where are we at? Okay, well, I'll try. We'll see how we go. There's some interesting stuff here. Maybe I should skip this one and go to this one, which is ebook costs consortium versus loan. This is a patron-driven acquisition for patron-driven access. I tend to see it more as access than acquisition. And even though in this model you can end up after 5 uses, where you pay 20% on each use, if the use was over 10 minutes, you end up paying for the thing one time, and as soon as it goes over the 5th to the 6th, we buy it. Now we're buying it in consortium. We pay 5 times the price that's normally charged for the electronic version, but it's for 37 now members of the consortium. So what we're doing here is a similar thing we did in the pay-per-view thing. Is, if you optimize, you buy the title in pay-per-view for journals if you would pay more money by doing a per use. So here the way you do that is by deciding on the value we want to set how many times you look at it and pay for looking at it. And the interesting thing here is you've got, the good news is the cost per title purchased is $73 as opposed to $140 when I'm doing ebooks on my own. But in the consortium, the cost per title available, again, now I'm looking at, I really want to, how well am I optimizing my bucks, what's available? And so I want to lower that number as far as I can. And it's better than what I can do in the ebook model that's basically going to buy access to collections, EBSCO. But the $35 against $275 in cost per access is just because this was a trial, and we only had very limited access, like 14,000 titles, a little less than that. And that's in the consortium with over 9 million unique titles. So it's such a small, the search terms aren't going to find that stuff. So we don't really have much volume. Until the volume gets up there, you're not going to, and you won't see that begin to change. You have to get the volume up high enough to begin to see if it can compete. The former screen basically showed that. At any rate, I think I'm good. Do I have more time, or I'm done?
Yes.
All right. Okay. Well, let's see if we can go back to. Let's see. How do I get back? Back arrow. Okay. Now let's take a quick look at this, because this is my subscription model for ebooks, and if you do the same kind of numbers on it or similar numbers on it, my cost for buying print, because what I'm comparing now is print versus the subscription model. And in the subscription model, you get titles added every year, so you take the cost of the subscription and see how many titles you get for it, and I'm paying $310 per title. And in the when I buy in print, I average about $80 a title. The cost per use, though, is very similar. That's because I've got more print books than I do ebooks. But the thing that happened this year that's really interesting is that people didn't like the ebooks. Students didn't like them until this year. The first survey out was I'll get a second here. I told the group at lunch. The Chronicle, there it is, word we can count. Chronicle of Higher Education, March 14th, had an article where they looked at a Pearson Foundation study of preferences for students for ebooks or print books, and we finally went over the 50% mark for students. This is the first year that that's happened, and this actually, these numbers predate that because I was looking a little earlier here. This is last year's numbers, and ebooks here had a slight advantage. It's 22% of the usage and only 21% the collection. So books are slipping versus, when you're looking at the percentage of the collection, they ought to be equal if they are equally desirable. There's another factor here that I know weighs in here, and that is most of my ebooks are much newer. So it's hard to say where we are, but these are the kinds of things you start running to see who's using what for what reason, to try and get a handle on how the usage patterns are changing. And again, this has to be understood. It's in the framework of a much different institution than Research One. They have very different exigencies than we do.